I'm Meta Spencer, and today I'm going to have a very interesting encounter with somebody who's got dimensions and interests that I want to explore in every which way. And this is Jessica Walton, and I think she's in the Washington, D.C. area. I've only met her about 30 seconds ago, but I really want to talk to her about many different things. She is an officer in a thing called Cyber Peace. And I've been looking for somebody in Cyber Peace for, oh, better part of a year, I think, because I wanted to interview somebody about that organization. These are people who are concerned, I guess, as most people are nowadays, about privacy. So they never put their phone numbers or any way to get in touch with anybody. So that's a big grievance of mine, but not against you in particular, dear.
I'm not in Washington, D.C. I'm actually based in Miami. So I'm in Miami, Florida at the moment, which, I can't complain, but I did live in Washington, D.C. for quite a long time. So familiar with, with all of that. Yeah.
Okay, tell me, you work full time really for Cyber Peace, is that
Yes.
it? Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay,
So,
that's great.
yeah.
Now, start at the top. Imagine I'd never heard of Cyber Peace because I don't know
Okay.
much about it, but I have really been impressed with the idea because
Yeah.
Project Save the World tries to connect with NGOs in six different domains: war and weapons, global warmings, famine, pandemics, cyber, and radioactive contamination, and deal with organizations that attempt to deal with the policies about such matters.
Yeah.
And it's really almost impossible to find an organization that I would consider comparable to the other NGOs
Mhm.
in the cyber area, because there are lots and lots of organizations, millions probably, of organizations of people who are professional cybersecurity experts who will do things like install software for you, or if you're a bank, they will trace who is trying to cheat you online and things like that, and all kinds of professionals. But there's hardly any room for ordinary people who simply have a concern as citizens about the threats or the issues that the public should be uh, working on. And
Yeah.
when I came across Cyber Peace, I thought that looks like the kind of organization that I've been hoping to find. Now,
Yeah.
am I right?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about it.
Absolutely. So, I'm Jessica Walton. I'm the U.S. Regional Officer for the Cyber Peace Institute. So, I direct all of the projects and programs on the U.S. and America side of things, but we're actually based in Geneva, Switzerland. We've been around since 2019, and our primary purpose is to provide free cybersecurity services to nonprofits around the world. And we service humanitarian organizations, peace and justice organizations, any organizations that are associated or affiliated with civil society, except for purely religious organizations. That's we have a couple of caveats, but otherwise we do it all. Um, we got our start in 2019, and we quickly had to transition to protect the most vulnerable at the time during 2020, which was healthcare organizations. Healthcare organizations were under attack because of the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of cyber attackers saw this as a huge cash in to put ransomware on healthcare organizations. And I'll explain what ransomware is. Basically, it's where a cyber attacker will put something on a computer system so that they can't access the system unless they pay a certain amount of money to the cyber attacker. And typically, for example, for a healthcare company, they might ask for millions and millions and millions of dollars because they know that that's may be possible for them to pay it. And so we swiftly kind of went into working on that. And from there, we've expanded now to a volunteer bank of approximately 1,400 volunteers. We have volunteers that are sitting in over 52 countries around the world. And we work in approximately 160 countries around the world. The nonprofits that we protect cover all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so you might be wondering, who are these volunteers? How do we do this? How do we get volunteers to even do this? And then also, what do they do? So the volunteers that we have come actually from industry. So we go to big companies or bigger companies that have a robust cybersecurity team or operations. And we say to them, listen, you have a corporate social responsibility team. You want to do good in the world. Here's one way that you can do that. You can take your cyber experts and you can donate some of their time that the company is already paying for them to work on some of these missions for the nonprofits. And I'll get into those missions in a second. And then they also pay into the program. So it's kind of like a double give. But the way that we sort of pitch it and we get them to be on board with it also is because for the cybersecurity experts, this gives them a lot of different problem sets to work on that maybe they're not working on, and like maybe their regular like bank job, where they're just protecting systems that are working on the for banking or for for healthcare or for tech or whatever the company's main product is. And so they're getting to work on a variety of different cybersecurity problems. And they're also getting to do good in the world, which, and I'm not saying that like maybe they don't enjoy their job, but maybe it's a little bit soul sucking to only be doing cybersecurity for like a bank, So getting to spend part of your week doing cybersecurity work for a nonprofit organization that's feeding children or protecting rural healthcare or making sure that people have clean drinking water. This is a reason for people to really want to log in and do this kind of work, and so it kind of gives them fulfillment as well. And so that's how we pitch the program, and it's been very, very successful. So now, what do these volunteers do for the nonprofits? So we have a range of missions that the nonprofits can work through, and this is everything from basic cyber hygiene. Cyber hygiene meaning don't make your password 123, or don't make your password your name and the year you were born. So having good password practices, all the way to, can I see if my credentials are on the dark web? And if they're on the dark web, can we go see if they're there, and what can we do about that? Or I'm afraid that an incident could happen and we don't have a response to that incident. So what is a good incident response plan for us? And so we might help them build a response plan to a cyber threat incident. It could be helping their employees to recognize phishing emails, which are super common. And the thing is, especially for a lot of nonprofits, it's typically the employees that are kind of the weakest link, right? Because if they're not aware that this email may be a scam, then they may click on it. Or you might get one of those text messages that say, hey, this is your CEO, and I need you to wire me $500 right away because I'm in this situation at the airport and I need to get somewhere quickly. I mean, if your CEO texts you that,
I get those every so often. They want me to send a gift card that.
Yeah. And so, a lot of times employees may kind of panic, like, I don't want to question him. I mean, of course, like, yeah, let me send it from the company account. And and they don't realize that they're actually sending it to a cyber attacker. And so, of course, these are kind of more tame ones, but then we have, incidents where, for example, a rural hospital could get ransom attacked and people die as a result. I mean, really, this can be and very often is a life and death situation. And so we help nonprofits prepare for that. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we do. CyberPeace, this program is called the CyberPeace Builders. I don't remember if I said that at the beginning. But we also do a couple other things at the Institute. We have a research and analysis team, and we work on analytical products. We also contribute to international institutions like the UN, the Open-Ended Working Group on ICTs, and so we're very heavily involved in working on policy for cybersecurity on an international level.
Okay. We have the most contact I have frequently with cyber peace issues that are having to do with the internet or so on are articles and contacts that I have. One of our friends, our close peace activists in Canada, is Paul Meyer, who was Canada's ambassador for disarmament until he retired. And he's very engaged at the UN, and I think some related outfit that may be more independent in trying to develop treaties and other regulatory agreements to limit what countries will do to sabotage each other, in cyberspace and so on. He's not very hopeful. Everything he writes is always it's not going too well.
It can certainly feel that way. Yeah, it's a little bit it's difficult, right? And I think that people do not take cybersecurity as seriously as they may think of like nuclear war, right? But if you really think about it, there's really not a big difference between a nuclear attack or a cyber attack on critical infrastructure that cuts water, electricity, logistics, supply. I mean, of course, with a nuclear attack, we're talking about a really big, violent, explosion that's kind of then leading into a lot of these same issues. And then with a cyber attack, it's not really violent at the beginning, but we run into all the same issues as we would with this kind of like nuclear attack. And so you could think of it in some ways, kind of trying to get to these international norms and regulatory norms in the international community in cyberspace, sort of as a disarmament of sorts. And we do work on that as well. We're currently working with several countries around the world, and we work with some experts that are contributing to what we call the harms methodology. And basically, this is a framework in which we can, and it's based on actually also some of the nuclear regulatory things. So it's based on other frameworks and methodologies, and we've really adapted that to kind of show that there is a threshold at which a cyber attack should be considered a war crime against civilians. Currently, we don't have that. And a lot of it is because countries won't agree on what that threshold is. And so one of the things we're working on is how can we have a methodology and a framework to decide what those levels are to be considered a war crime? How can these incidents be taken for litigation to, for example, the International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court? And so, yeah, these are things that we work on as well.
I tend to immediately go into my own concern about the need for privacy, that we're always being told, do not share information about anything about yourself. They're going to, on Facebook or anything like that. Don't let anybody know anything about you. And I shouldn't plunge into this immediately because it's a side issue for you. For me, it's something I spent a lot of time thinking about. Is the effort that I have to make to reach people in the daytime by finding their emails and their phone numbers and contacting them and so on. It has become almost impossible because people are scared to let anybody know anything about themselves. I think I'm old and I grew up in an era where transparency was admired, that people who let it all hang out, you see my faults, you see my bad record, you can see whether I ever went to prison, how many husbands I've had, things like that. All of those things were when I was young, it was considered an admirable quality to be completely frank and open, and even to be radically honest, to not lie and to not tell white lies to make people feel comfortable, but to be honest and say, no, you want me to tell you that your hairdo is becoming, but in fact, I don't really like it. I mean, to be honest. And all of those things are values that I hold dearly. It isn't that I necessarily am any more truthful than anybody else, because I catch myself fudging and, not quite being straightforward, probably as much as anybody else. But in principle, I believe in radical honesty, being even blunt and taking the consequences if people don't like what you say.
Yeah.
Well, that is so contrary to what we're doing nowadays, and I feel ethically wrong about going along with it. But more than that, I also feel that the amount of time that is spent wasted in trying to find out information that perfectly reasonable people may have need to know. I have need to know, for example, to contact Cyber Peace. I couldn't find you I couldn't get anybody to answer. It wasn't a phone number. I couldn't find anything. I mean, I would tell you probably I've spent 4 or 5 hours at least looking for your phone number.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that if I've just been reading not Eric, Ezra Klein's book, Abundance, wonderful new book. And he is pointing out something that, in fact, he's a little uncomfortable about it because it's bad timing. He's pointing out that Americans and many other countries now, but especially the US, can't get anything done. They can't build anything. It takes 10. Well, the California just gave up trying to make a rapid train system.
Mm-hmm.
They've been trying it for something like 30 years, and they can't build it. They finally admitted it can't be done because of all the regulations that make it impossible for them to do it. Well, the amount of time that goes into getting past the built-in privacy rules that keep people from, in one regulatory domain, from sharing information with people in the other regulatory domains, and so they can't cooperate, they can't do anything, so nothing gets done. And the amount of work, or even building highways and so on, they can't build highways, they can't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
And so there was another article I read, I think in Foreign Affairs, very current Foreign Affairs, about productivity, how really the success of an economy is more reflected in the productivity than almost anything else. It's very, very important. And there have been periods when, the US was highly productive, that the amount of work that an average worker would get done was good. And it should be very good now with all of these, technical devices that we have that should be improving our productivity. It's not. And it's not because, among other things, these agencies can't share information with each other. And certainly, ordinary mortals like you and me do not want our phone numbers known.
Yeah.
And that is affecting the actual productivity and the economy because it wastes our time. Now,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what can you do about that, because you do want to protect people. These rules have some basis, probably a lot of basis. You certainly, I've every day I get phishing, at least one, and sometimes three or four fraudulent, phishing attacks of some kind, trying to swindle me one way or another. So we do need to protect ourselves, but we can't go on doing it the way we're doing it now.
Yeah.
That's what I want to talk about. Give me a better idea of how we can. I think the problem is it has to do with the fact. There's a guy at Harvard that I interviewed about this. I can't think of his name. Yeah, it was wonderful. He gives his books wonderful titles. One is called "Click Here to Kill Everybody."
That's certainly what the internet can feel like sometimes.
Well, I can't remember his name, but he's a great guy. And he was just pointing out that defense is much harder than offense. In cyber, the criminals have it easy.
Yeah.
Because there's no way to catch them.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
I think that's key. So I think that there is so much emphasis on defense. Why? Because defense is where a lot of these cybersecurity companies make money. The focus on defense also allows, and I want to even take this back like another step. I think like the foundation of all of these issues that we're seeing with people not wanting to put their information online and I mean just the lack of transparency and just this ecosystem that we've sort of like trapped ourselves into. I think the bottom line is greed. I mean, greed. Greed. What runs these cyber attackers want to go out and attack a hospital or a food bank? Greed, because they know that
for sure that's on their part,
right? And then on the other side, bigger cybersecurity companies, why will they only work with organizations that are able to pay them a lot of money to secure their network? Well, I mean, also there's an element of greed there, right? So I think this is kind of like the foundation, and then that leaves a little room for offense to happen, especially for nonprofits and for regular people like you and me who, I mean, obviously I've worked in cybersecurity for a long time, but for somebody who has no idea what cybersecurity is, they've never really maybe they've heard the concepts, very out of context or, conceptually, but maybe they don't quite understand the sort of the steps that you would need to take for basic cyber hygiene. And really, those are the building blocks of offense. And when you have good offense, you don't need as good of defense. And so I think that is that's really what CyberPeace Builders is all about. Is we don't want you to get to the point where you're reaching out to us because you've been attacked. Because honestly, at that point, there's not a lot we can do. At that point, we have to send you to, the police in your hometown, which maybe they have a cert Maybe at the state level, there's some capability to deal with an incident. Or you just pay the ransom, or you just lose a lot of money, or you just have to, kick off that part of your system and you're going to lose all that data. And for a lot of organizations, that might mean that they have to completely shut down their operations. That might mean that they have to do mass layoffs. That might mean that people die. That might mean that they can't get food to places where they need to get food to. Or they're working with refugees, and now all of the data of those refugees are in the hands of a state that shouldn't have the data of those refugees. So if we can get people to think about offense when it comes to cybersecurity, we are in a way better world. And
offense is, I think of offense is what the criminal is doing, and defense is protecting ourselves. So if I have to learn to think as a criminal in order to know how to protect myself, is that what you're saying? I have to figure
not
out
necessarily.
how if I were going to be swindling somebody, how would I do it? I have to know enough about the technology. Is that it?
I would think about it like a sports game. Like in a sports game, you're both playing offense and defense. There's not like a good, the good guy or bad guy. And obviously in the real world, we do have the good guy and bad guy. But in this sense, yeah, it's sort of defense, I guess, if you wanna call it like that. But I think of it as offense because we're going for the goal. We're going for, we're going to protect ourselves against this other team, basically. So that's kind of how I'm conceptualizing it as offense. I'm thinking about it more in kind of like a sports framework. So, yeah.
Well, my thinking is this. If I start letting my phone number be known and I'm not very careful because I really, I don't, I do believe in transparency. So I take risks.
Mhm.
Now, but then let's say I do get somebody can hack my bank account and get my money or something. What I'm feeling is I think that there should be a lot more investment in law enforcement.
Mhm.
That there should be, and here's where I don't know the technology. If the government spent more on making sure that a crook gets caught, or at least a much stronger chance they get caught, then more people could afford to be open about their phone numbers, their, all kinds of things, except maybe their mother's middle name, or some things like that need to be kept. But I think we could be very frank about sharing all kinds of information, and the world would be a lot better. And we would have higher productivity in the country because the amount of work that goes into trying to find out legitimately information that we really need to know about each other, and we can't find it out. And that is a waste of human energy, and it slows our productivity. Now, is it possible that, let's say, if the government increased the budget for law enforcement, are there technological gimmicks that they could use to catch the crooks?
This is an interesting and maybe a little bit of a loaded question. I want to speak here more on like a sorry, that was my email. I want to speak here maybe more on a personal side and maybe less as U.S. Regional Officer of Cyber Peace Institute. I will say if we're thinking about this on a global scale, this is a very difficult question, the question of giving law enforcement more money and more access to data, because in a lot of countries, law enforcement are not trusted by civil society organizations, and they can even be in cahoots with the government to get information that these civil society organizations, activists, etc., do not want the government to have. In the United States, I think several years ago, I maybe would have agreed with you that this could be an avenue that we could take. I think right now that question is a little bit more difficult. And I
Because
think
of
it
what
can
Trump
go,
is doing.
yes, and I think it can go by a case basis here,
Mhm.
at a state and local level, because there are state and local governments and police offices, for example, that might be more trustworthy or trusted by the civil society actors that are working in that area, and some areas where they are not. For example, New York, I know. I don't want to say like a percent because I have no idea, but I know the majority of civil society organizations that I've talked to, or that I have friends that work in New York City, do not trust the New York Police Department. And they would be very, very uncomfortable with giving data or giving any kind of ability to get into their systems, even for looking at what cyber threats might be launched against them, or if they had an incident, helping them deal with that incident. I think there's a lot of discomfort. And a lot of that is because exactly what you said. I mean, look at what the administration is doing currently. They're able to get information from just by bullying, a lot of these groups or actors or law enforcement to get information
The
that
government
before,
agencies and take over,
yeah, yeah,
the
exactly.
government
Before they weren't
records
able
now.
to get this
Yeah.
information without going to a court to be given basically a warrant to have that data. And at this point, they're able to basically twist their arms to get that data without going through a court, without going through a judge. And there is a lot of discomfort with that. Now, I think that's where now I'll speak more as the U.S. regional officer of cyberpeace. I think that's where an organization like ours can come into play. And I will say we do on the Europe side, and I don't work as much on the Europe side, but on the Europe side we have a program called Underserved, where we do work directly with law enforcement organizations, and we do help make the enforcement organizations more robust in helping civil society organizations. And when they asked me if something like that could be replicated here in the US, I said no, that I don't think so. I think that is a way more difficult conversation because we have civil society has a very different relationship with law enforcement in the United States than they do in Europe. Obviously, Europe is not perfect. They also have a lot of issues, but it's just nowhere near the level that we have here in the United States. So that's kind of what I would say about that. So what is the solution? I mean, I don't think that there is any one solution, and I think that Cyber Peace Builders and some of the programs that we're helping to build out in the U.S., which is for example, the Cyber Resilience Corps, we're working on a project with UC Berkeley Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity to actually put together a platform where all cyber volunteer groups around the country are able to share resources, are able to share data, are able to map out where their efforts are and what efforts they're working on. And beneficiaries can come to this platform to be able to see exactly where and who can give them the help that they specifically need instead of going around the internet blindly trying to figure out who can help me because I need this or this. So we're currently building that out. We are hoping to launch that in June. And Meta, I'm happy to send you more information. So if anybody's interested, in getting connected with Cyber Resilience Corps, they can certainly do that, or with Cyber Peace Builders in general. But these are some of the solutions. But at the end of the day, volunteering and volunteer work is not really like the solution. You know what I mean? Like in an ideal world, we wouldn't need to exist. In an ideal world, I wouldn't have a job, which, I mean, that would kind of suck not having a job. But in an ideal world, this would not be an issue that's being this gaping wound that's being patched by the Band-Aid of volunteers.
Got it.
So
Yeah, I can't disagree with a word you've said. I hadn't really thought through the connection to actually what's going on in the U.S. government now. Although living in Canada, that's all we talk about these days. You know,
Yeah.
well, no, actually, what I think I was alluding to when I referred to this guy at Harvard with his "click here to kill everybody" title, he was thinking in terms of technologically that it is technologically easy for people to try to swindle us. All they need is an email address or phone number, and they're off and running, and they can do hundreds per day. You know, reach out to crooks can do mass produce their crimes, and that there is no technological answer. I mean, I would like to have an app that I put onto my computer that flashes red every time and I'm about to open an email that is going to be fraudulent, or somebody phoning me that pretends to be my Amazon is telling me what my balance is and that they've got a doubt that my recent purchase was real, and would I verify that I just, whatever that stuff is. Yeah. They do this different things every day. Is there anything in the works that where there could be the technology itself could alert people to suspicious fraudulent activity, so that I wouldn't have to keep hiding from my friends or from people who would like to be my friends but can't find me?
Yeah, I think certainly there's a lot of this that already exists. I mean, if you look at your Outlook mail, or you look at your Gmail, for example, you'll have an entire inbox where you have phishing emails or likely spam emails that are completely filtered out. However, it's not perfect, right? And I think one of the issues that we're seeing right now is AI-enabled cyber attacks. Which has changed the game. And I think that a lot of these tech companies are having, there's a bit of a lag between the ability of cyber attackers and their ability to be able to detect what is an AI-enabled cyber attack. And the reason for this is because, in the past, it was fairly easy to figure out that something was a phishing email, because maybe it was things were misspelled. It wasn't, it was coming from an email address that was obviously not real.
Actually, you make it sound easier than even that is. To be honest, I can't tell. And when I get a questionable one, I simply forward it on to one of my assistants. They say, almost invariably, they say it's fraudulent, it's hoax. Don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but how do they know? Because all this time I haven't been able to learn. I do know to check the hold your cursor up so you see the return address, and if it doesn't match what they say they are, then there's something wrong. But that doesn't always work. That doesn't necessarily. So I'm not even good at these, what you call basic hygiene.
Yeah, there's like these typical markers, I think, in the past, that and I think, yes, you're absolutely right. It is kind of a generational thing. I think for older generations that didn't grow up with technology, it's way harder. Whereas, for me, I largely didn't grow up with, I mean, the internet as we know it today. I'm 36, I'll be, honest. So like, I mean, I had computer class and stuff when I was in school, but it was basic typing, and it's nothing like my sister's generation, who's 10 years younger than me. And sometimes even she will, she is a tech native. From birth, she was, introduced to all of these tech systems. And so even to her eyes, there's some things that she's like, oh yeah, this is this. You didn't know that? And I'm like, how did I not know that? I should know that, you know? And so I think a lot of it, it's almost like a language, right? Like if you don't learn a language by the time you're, 15, 18, you're always going to have an accent, for example. And I think that we have to think of tech as sort of the same, right? So, and not that older generations cannot learn tech to fluency. They absolutely can. I'm impressed all the time with my step grandma. She's 95 and she's like on her iPad and works that thing better than, than honestly like my brother does. Um, can absolutely learn it, but you will never be native. Like some of the younger generations are native. And so I think sometimes there's these little things that, like, to me, or to maybe a trained eye or to a native eye, you would be able to tell that something is not right about this. And I think AI is changing that in a way because they're able to speak the language fluently. They're able to give you an email address that is so exactly like the email address that it's supposed to be coming from, that unless you were an expert, you would not, or if you were running a program to detect the AI phishing scam, for example, you wouldn't know, you wouldn't detect it. Even I got hit by a phishing attack. I think it was maybe like a year ago, and it was from I gave a CEO example earlier, and the reason I gave that was because that's exactly what happened to me. It was coming from my CEO, but it wasn't his email address. It was an email address coming from like a Proton Mail. Now, a Proton Mail is a Swiss organization. So it made sense to me. I mean, we're a Swiss organization. My CEO is in Switzerland, and maybe he's just texting me on his phone because he's out of the office. It made sense. The email was very coherent. And I was kind of, okay, is this real or is this not? I don't know. And absolutely, it's getting to the point where it's almost impossible to tell if something is a scam or not. And so to your point, are there technological solutions for this? Well, yes and no. Yes, cybersecurity companies are working on innovations to be able to find the markers within the actual data that's filtering through with emails or with the actual traffic, to be able to see that, hey, this is a cyber threat. This needs to get filtered out. This needs to get blocked from going to this computer, for example. But I think that we're always kind of like a step behind. We're always a little bit of a step
Somebody
behind.
was telling me yesterday about a new gimmick they have where they can take a video of your friend, let's
Mhm.
say, and make up a dialogue using their voice and maneuvering their image so that it looks like they're speaking to you
Mhm.
in their own voice. Your own
Yep.
friend looks real. And
Yeah.
if your friend is calling and I'm stuck in the airport in, you know,
Yeah.
in Syria or someplace, send me some money.
Mhm.
Of course, you'd send him some money. But now, what in the world can be done about that? This is
Yeah.
what a world that I can live in. I can't do it.
Yeah. This is called a deep fake. And this has major implications even beyond personal cybersecurity, where we could be mistaken in believing that a friend or family member is in distress. I think this has implications for our entire world and our societies, because deepfakes can be used to threaten democracies. We've already seen deepfakes used, for example, to pretend like a politician said something that they didn't say. And you could watch an entire video of a politician giving a speech that they never gave.
I
Saying,
believe they
yeah,
made something of Obama saying something he would never in the world have said.
yes, yes. That was actually one of the original deepfake videos that came out, was an Obama, like it was like an 8-second clip of Obama saying something that he never said. But it's come so far since then, to the point where it's virtually undetectable unless you're able to actually look at the metadata of that video. And there are certain markers that will show you that this is not an original video, that this was not taken and posted, that this has been tampered with. And so unless you're somebody who's trained to do that, and most people are not, it can be very, very difficult to know if what you're watching is real or not.
Well,
And
could an app be developed that would do that for you? And you just filter it through this app, yeah?
yeah, I think that there are some apps out there. I don't know any off the top of my head, but I think there are some apps out there that that do that. But then, of course, it's like getting people to get the app and run a video through the app. And I just don't think people are going to do that. And so then we have, for example, what Facebook used to do. Facebook used to have what was called like a fact checker, basically. And these were real people that sat, you know, in an office, and they would go through and check videos or check articles and check different things to make sure that they were not AI, to make sure that they were not deep fakes, to make sure that this was information that was true or correct, or partially true or partially correct, and they would label it. Well, what happened when the Trump administration came into power and Meta decided that they wanted to get fully on board with the Trump administration? The first thing that they did is they got rid of this department. And so now, and they cited free speech as the reason. And so now it's like the Wild West. You know, basically you get on Facebook and like I don't really use Facebook anymore. I mean, I still have it because like my brother has it, and I see my nephew, and my mom still has it, and that's kind of what she uses because it's what she's comfortable with, and I get that. But if I ever scroll through Facebook, it's just garbage.
That you think that's so.
Yeah. It's, I mean, you know, really just every other thing is just AI. We call it AI slop, where you just kind of see some art rendering or some fake news that's AI. And it's interesting to me because what I also see is some of my other family members who repost a lot of this AI generated content or AI generated photos, and they believe that it's true. To me, I'm like, this is obviously fake, but because they haven't gone through any of these kinds of like trainings or any of these kinds of awareness, like an awareness training or anything pertaining to that, they just believe that because it's there, well, it has to be true.
I don't believe in censorship, theoretically. But of course, everything we're talking about indicates that we should have censorship. We should filter out all this junk. But I think if I'm trying to reconcile the 2 points of view, I think what I would do with Facebook is allow all of the false stuff to be printed, but have a little flag showing this is not true, or we think it's not true. And so that everybody can realize if they're reading something, this probably is a lie.
Yeah, and that's what they used to do. That's what they used to do prior to January. And then as soon as Trump came into power, they completely got rid of this department. So
well, could they? I don't know how they could do it anyway, because there are so many zillion Facebook posts going on. How could they do even a tiny sample of the volume of the traffic?
Well, I don't know if there's much political will or interest on the part of Meta to even do that. I know before they would kind of run it through these same sort of systems that we were discussing earlier, where they would, you know, check, basically check metadata to see if it.
But you were saying that these were human beings doing it. I mean, if you could automate it, that would be one thing. But if you have to actually have people doing it, the amount of work, considering the huge volume.
Yeah, it's definitely a mix of both. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of, there's a lot of machine work that's going on behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, there's also a human who's kind of sitting there to make sure that that the machines are working properly, that they're making sure that they're checking the metadata markers that they should be checking. And in cases where maybe somebody reports something that hasn't been flagged yet, maybe that might go through a real person where they will see, oh, is this harassment? Is this is this violent content that shouldn't be online? And maybe in that case, it might be a real person who takes a look at it and decides. Not always, but sometimes, yes.
So they were able to do enough so that you could, until recently, you could figure that junk would be caught, most likely.
Yes.
I see. Okay, well, I didn't
Yeah.
know how much they were doing of that. So that sounds like what we need is some fact checkers, but not to censor it so much as to warn people that this is very questionable.
I will say though that even though they did have that system before, it definitely wasn't perfect. And there was a lot of incidents where there may have been payment, for example, to push through certain information that maybe was not entirely true, and to push that out into more people's feeds. And so there were incidents of this happening. And so no system I think is perfect, but at least there was something. And now we're really just kind of looking at the Wild West of, like you said, zero censorship, but well, not zero censorship. Obviously, we know that Meta is censoring certain things that they don't want people to have access to, or they don't want people to see. But what I mean is by that is like censorship of actual, putting out like fake articles or putting out deep fakes. There's really no label to say this is likely not true, or this is likely a deep fake, or this is likely something that was used with generative AI. And so we do have, like, on Instagram, for example, if you make a background with a generative AI, it'll say created with Meta AI. Okay, but we don't have where they're actually looking at like articles to verify truth within that. So there's that aspect that's kind of been lost.
Well, I used to use Facebook a lot. I mean, use it is not the word for it. I used to play with it a lot, but a little bit less so lately. But I don't believe I've ever caught an incoming post that was labeled, "Watch out for this. It's probably not true." I don't ever receive one. So but I've never had what I think was a fraudulent post on Facebook.
Yeah.
But I do wish that there were a service that I could sign up for, that would be an app that it would filter all my email and warn me, and my, all of my Zoom calls and so on.
Yeah, I would say that I think the best defense against that is really putting yourself through a little offensive course on cybersecurity. And of course, at Cyber Peace Institute, we don't work with just individuals, but there are great organizations out there that have free resources for individuals to work on cyber hygiene. One that I will shout out is Cyber Collective. They are in New York City, but they work all around the country, and they work specifically, they work a lot with, for example, elderly groups. They work with children, they work with teens, they work with a lot of underserved groups for cybersecurity, and they offer all these resources for free. And I think there are organizations doing this amazing work that people just have to take it upon themselves, unfortunately, to go out and seek this information so they can keep themselves safe online.
I will put them, superimpose them over, your face or something.
Yeah.
So people can see where they could contact help.
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
yeah,
and it sounds like I ought to take one of these courses too. But
everybody should. Even me, I've worked in cybersecurity for like 16 years, and honestly, like, I need refreshers all the time because it is constantly changing. And I think that it's something that we as citizens of the world, as citizens of the internet, we have to take upon ourselves to keep ourselves safe. We keep ourselves safe when we get in the car, we keep ourselves safe when we go outside, we keep ourselves safe in the house. why don't we keep ourselves safe online? And so I think that's this mindset shift that we all have to kind of have as people living in this digital world.
Well, and so Cyber Peace is one of those outfits, right? See, you're the only organization I had ever come across that seemed to be offering. I don't know. Do you have people joining just in order to support certain policies? I mean, I'm in the peace movement, and I've been, I've joined probably many dozens of peace organizations, NGOs, and mostly they take a position about, well, whether Canada should get out of NATO or try to get some other countries to join NATO or whatever. They worry about policy, military and peace policy, and so on. And we exchange enormous. I'm this way for right now a lot for climate change. I belong to listservs, or what used to be called listservs. They're not that anymore, but go Google groups and so on, where we have all these conversations going on constantly. But I don't see anything quite equivalent to that for the public. That for people who are concerned about the future of the internet, and especially, of course, now worrying about the implications of AI. And I don't suppose that Cyber Peace works on AI specifically, do you?
We don't work on AI specifically, but we do have a lot of, I mean, of course, it's in everything. So, for example, we have Cyber Peace Academy, where we teach nonprofits how to properly incorporate AI into their practices. We also, I mean, obviously use AI in our own operations, where we have an AI-enabled system to be able to bring in data for cyber threats that are happening against nonprofits and civil society organizations. And so we work heavily with AI as well, but we are not an AI organization specifically.
But is there a role for the general public to participate somehow in supporting and participate in the discussions about policy, about the Cyber Peace?
Well, I will say for Cyber Peace Institute specifically, if you're part of a nonprofit, if you're part of a civil society organization and you're interested in getting involved, just get in touch with us. And I'll make sure that Meta has all that information. So I don't know where she'll put it, but you're able to get in touch with us to be able to get involved in the program, and it is for free. And I will say, for people that are interested in getting involved in cybersecurity policy, there are avenues to do that. Oh, one other thing I'll say about Cyber Peace Institute is that also, if you're a cybersecurity practitioner and you're working at a company and you would like to be a volunteer, also get in touch with us, because we would love to talk to you. And you don't have to sign up your entire company in order to volunteer. You can volunteer individually. Obviously, we would love if your company got involved, because that gives us, more money to do our work, more manpower to do our work. Now, the other thing that I'll say about cybersecurity policy and in getting involved in that, it really depends at what level you want to do this. There are some great organizations out there that are working on some of these issues. One of the organizations I will shout out is All Tech is Human. I've worked All Tech is Human. So their philosophy is that we have to stop thinking about tech as like, hardware, software, something that is just, not tangible. That tech affects humans, and it affects our humanity in ways that are interlinked, and that we have to keep that in mind in everything that we do in technology. They're an amazing organization. They work really heavily on policy. They're also a nonprofit. I think they're based in New York City. They work on policy in a few different tracks, one of which is cyber and democracy, which is super, super interesting. They also have AI, emerging technology. And so if there are people who are interested in getting into that, I highly, highly recommend getting involved with All Tech is Human, because they have events in New York, they have events in DC, London, Denver. I think even in LA, they were having events. And so They're expanding quickly. And this is a way to get plugged into the community and also see how you can get involved in policy either at your local level, state level, federal, or even international level. So there's all different levels that people can get involved in cyber. If I were to give people a tip, I think if they're into cybersecurity policy, I think one of the biggest things that is missing is people thinking about this on a very local level. You know, going down to your local mom and pop, going down to, the local civil society organizations that are handing out food every weekend. Do they have cyber protections? If not, why not? And what can you do on a local level to make sure that these organizations are safe? This is so overlooked, I think, sometimes when people are thinking about, all of these like regulatory institutions and the UN and, what about your neighbors? So I think this is something, to really think about as well. Thank you so much. This was so great.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and I hope everybody learn something about cyber hygiene.
Yes, don't make your password 123.
Okay, thank you so much, dear. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All good wishes. Okay, bye.
You as well. Goodbye.
Bye.